Welcome to the Get Sculpted podcast. We're your hosts, Tijana,
Jordana,
and Marilyn.
This podcast is all about cutting through the noise and giving you the real deal on fat loss, muscle building, and what it really takes to build your 2.0 sculpted self, inside and out. Our motto is to work smarter, not harder. We'll break down science-based and actionable strategies to optimize your metabolism, ditch the diets, and create a sustainable, fit, and healthy lifestyle that actually works for you. So if you're ready to get stronger, not just skinnier, and embrace a body you love, hit that subscribe button and let's get sculpted. All right, welcome back to the pod, everyone. I'm very excited today. We are joined by my right-hand woman, Lindsey Craig, and I'm just so excited to share all her wisdom when it comes to being an active participant in coming out of a dark season. So Lindsey, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I can't wait just to chat again about everything that happened this past year and just moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. You're such a source of inspiration for so many people. So I think the appropriate thing is to lead with how this all started. So just take us back for a second to October 2023, I guess it would be, because we're in 2025 now.
Yeah.
What was happening that really changed the trajectory of your life at that point?
Well, so you and I had been working together for just about 5 months. We were almost like ready to go for photo shoot prep. I think I was literally like 3 weeks away. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we noticed a swelling with our son and acted very, very quickly, got him into the hospital, to which they did an ultrasound and said, there's something there. We don't know what it is, but come back tomorrow so we can look further. And so went back the next day. They did an ultrasound and confirmed that there was a mass visible. And even at that point, it still hadn't even clicked in my brain that there was a possibility it could be anything leading towards cancer. Mm-hmm. Everything started right in that moment. And it was very, very quick. And I remember everything very vividly, but at the same time, I forget so much of it. But it was within 8 days, his surgery was scheduled. We then had to go through the 2-week wait for biopsy results. And I specifically remember it was mid-October. I was driving home from work and I was chatting with a friend and she was like, oh, have you heard anything about, Logan's biopsy results? And I was like, no, it's really weird. And literally during that conversation, it was like 6:42 in the evening. I see a phone number pop up and it was an out of town number. And I was like, crap. So I hung up and answered the call and it was his surgeon. And he indicated that the biopsy had come back, confirmed that it was cancer. And we were going to be transferred immediately so we could kind of dive into what those next steps would look like for Logan.
So you actually heard when you were on a drive?
Yeah.
And it was just you by yourself?
Just me by myself. Was talking to my friend. We were just having a random conversation. She was checking in. And it's like I put it out into the universe and the universe was like, hey, let's give you your answer now.
Wow.
And yeah, he called me and that saying where you never get good news at night from a doctor? Well, that was true in our case. So we spoke. He was one of the most wonderful doctors I've ever worked with. He took care of absolutely everything. He made sure that everything was transferred incredibly quickly. Thankfully, the oncology team from the hospital also knew the oncologist where Logan was going to be transferred. So communication started almost instantly, and we were in within about 5 days of getting his diagnosis over the phone.
So you were prepping for a shoot, like you said. Everything was going well in your life where you're like, I'm on a good path here.
Yeah.
And within the span of, a couple weeks, things changed so dramatically. So what was going through your head when you heard that news and then were like, okay, I got to embark on this new chapter?
So when Logan was diagnosed, ultimately our entire world was flipped upside down. So I went from photo shoot prep to having my head like fully in the game of, I was trying to be in the best shape of my life. I was taking care of myself. I was taking care of everything else around me. I was still coaching, all of that. And everything kind of felt like a standstill. So everything essentially changed. We had appointments, we had chemo, and just the uncertainty of everything that was going to happen was just so overwhelming. But ultimately, training became my anchor. So it was really in that moment. It wasn't about Obviously, photo shoot needed to be put on hold, but it wasn't about vanity or chasing those aesthetic goals. It was now more about survival, both physically, mentally, but also emotionally. And training was that one thing that I could control.
As you're saying this, that was kind of my next thing I was going to ask is I think most people would receive this news, any devastating news. Like, we've all had our world turned upside down one way or another, obviously in degrees less than you have. But I think where most people's heads are at is like, okay, I'm going to like just completely put everything else on hold, including myself and my needs, and just focus on this thing and like double down in tunnel vision. But the problem is then you kind of destroy your own health in your path, and that's never a good thing. So
absolutely.
So like, you kind of started saying this, but I'd love if you could elaborate on like what your thought process was that when you said the fitness was anchoring you, like why were you automatically so compelled to be in that headspace?
Honestly, a saying that I've always gone by is control the controllable. So training was literally the only thing that I could control because everything else was completely out of my hands. So it gave me just that sense of routine, that stability, really during a time where everything else was unstable. So it was just that opportunity for me to take care of myself so I could continue to show up for my family. If I wasn't physically and mentally strong, then how was I going to support Logan? How was I going to support him through chemotherapy? How was I going to show up for my husband? How was I going to show up for my daughter? Still show up for the few clients that I had at that moment, and also my jobs, because this was now a massive life change. So at the end of the day, it wasn't about motivation. It was really about necessity, because movement also just really helped me process the heaviness of everything that was going on. It helped me clear my head, and honestly, feeling like myself in a time when it would have been just so easy to say, screw it, and kind of quit and just dive right into this new world of cancer. But I didn't train because I had the time or energy. I trained because it gave me the strength to have that time and energy and handle everything else that was going on.
Wow, that's such a good tidbit. And I reflect a lot actually on like, what is it that makes people like you really like go for it and lean into it rather than lean away from it? And I'd love if you could speak to like when we started together. First of all, just for the listener, Lindsay started as a client of mine, applied for my scholarship. And I remember reading your story and we followed each other, but I didn't know that you had childhood cancer. And part of what you said was like, I was given a second chance at life. I don't want to be playing small here. Like I'm here to really go all in. So do you think that background of you coming from that is what propels you toward fitness as well?
Hands down. Yes, absolutely. I think the moment that I committed to fitness, it was like, this is just who I am now. And it was a part of my identity. And there was really no going back. Now, obviously, we know the fitness journey ebbs and flows, and I had 2 children and all of that. But really, I had to just kind of take into perspective and put into account and use all of that to move me forward rather than using that as something that could have potentially pulled me completely backwards.
Yeah, I relate in that sense to you because we both have fitness as our anchor and it's changed our life in a powerful way. And, I'm sure you would agree when you're fit, sculpted, lean, like dialing in your habits, dialing in nutrition, fitness, you're just your best, most optimal self that you can bring to everything.
Absolutely.
And for the people who are not there, I think a lot of people can't imagine that because they haven't yet like gotten bitten by the fitness bug. So they haven't seen how great they can feel. So
true.
I think this is a good way to kind of future pace for people. You're always going to come across a dark season in your life one time or another. And one of the standards that we come back to with our team is our sculpted standard of being an active participant in coming out of a dark season. So you embody this better than anyone, which is why I'm like, let's name the episode this, and that's the whole theme. So I would love if you could give the most basic tidbit of advice to the listener. How would you distill that, embodying being an active participant and coming out of a dark season?
So kind of like I already said, control the controllable. That's literally when life throws you into a dark season, it's so easy to ultimately just feel paralyzed by the weight of everything that's happening around you, but you can't stay stuck. And I think for me, it was that I needed to start with those small, tangible actions. So whether it was me getting my steps in because I was doing laps while like literally Logan was hooked up to an IV getting chemo, or he was coming out of a procedure. If it was prioritizing a workout, after we got home at 10 o'clock at night and I wanted to go to bed, it was, no, I need to do my workout because I needed that time. Drinking my water or even just like prepping a meal. Those were all really small habits that I just focused on getting in as much as I could each day. Now, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say that I was perfect throughout that entire journey, but all of those tiny wins really kind of added up to that sense of control. So it wasn't about making sure that everything was perfect. If it was messy or imperfect, it was still small actions that reminded me that I had the power to keep going. And at the end of the day, that's how you come out of darkness, by actively choosing to take your life back.
Yeah, that's a powerful statement because a lot of people feel like they're kind of a victim to their circumstance. And like you said, a lot of things are not in your control. And I like how you said, control the controllable. I think this is something we discuss often when working with our clients. The first step, we have the tactical solutions of like, hey, this is what you're going to do when this happens. But the first step before that is the mental buy-in. I think people need to realize how important it is to keep themselves in tip-top mental and physical shape. And that does obviously ebb and flow with the season of life, but there is value in dedicating the time to do that. I think when people get in this dark state, they don't take the action because they kind of think in the back of their mind, what's the point?
Absolutely.
But there is a point. And that point is you're going to obviously have a winning season waiting for you, but that's going to come a lot faster if you are actually actively taking those actions. So I know that, we can't ever wish for things like this to happen, but everyone's going to experience that dark season. And as dark as this time was, obviously, for you and your family, I know that the resiliency that you developed has definitely shaped you as a person. Would you say?
Oh, hands down. There's really not much more that I could say about that. But at the end of the day, this experience really taught me what true resilience really was, because something that I thought I understood after surviving cancer myself, but clearly this was obviously a lot different. So when I was 7, I didn't have much of a say in how things played out. Obviously, my parents shielded me from a lot of that. They made all those hard decisions and carried that weight. But as a mom, it was now my turn to carry all of that for Logan. And so I learned that resilience isn't always just about enduring. It's about adapting and showing up even when you feel completely broken inside. And I know, T, that you just mentioned, being in that dark season, but at the end of the day, light comes back. No matter what, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. It might take a little bit longer to get there, but the light comes back. And I've also learned that it's so important to lean on any support that's available. So I've made some incredible friends and incredible connections through this oncology world. And I really, truly couldn't have done it alone, whether it was my husband, friends, you, our Get Sculpted community, or even just my own habits and routines. Those were all my lifelines. And most importantly, it taught me that life doesn't stop when darkness falls. And there's no pause button, especially when you kind of just want to get under the covers and stay there for the rest of your life. There is no pause button because you have yourself depends on you, but you have other people in your life who still need you, and there's still other responsibilities. But you just figure it out. You keep moving, even if it's not perfect.
That's a really good tidbit that you said, especially the one about leaning into your support system.
Huge.
Yeah, as much as we hate on social media as a whole because it sucks up a lot of our time and the dopamine hits and whatever. But I will say that it allows us to connect with people in a similar situation to us that we would never have the power to do prior to the magic of the internet. So I know you met a ton of moms in the Golden Moms group that you're in, and they're the moms of children who are going through cancer treatment. And, I'd love if you could speak to the fact that you're actually working with a couple of these ladies right now. And I think this is a full circle moment because you're helping them make it through their dark season.
So yes, in terms of getting to work with some fellow oncology moms, it's so beyond a privilege. It's truly an honor that these moms have, reached out, and I now get to walk alongside them on this journey. I have a couple moms, so some are done treatment, some are still in treatment with their kids. And it's such an eye-opening experience to see other women who are in that exact same phase that I was and are still choosing themselves, because there's a lot of golden moms that I have connected with. And it's so hard to choose yourself when you really just want to choose your child. You want to prioritize everything that's going on with your child. And I think one of the hardest decisions that these oncology moms have made is to put themselves first right now. And the fact that I get to do that with them it's so inspiring. So I know a few clients have said to me, how my journey has been very inspiring for them, but all of my clients inspire the heck out of me. But being able to work with moms who have kind of walked the same walk that I have it's just next level.
Yeah, I really like that. And I agree. I think I get inspired by you and many of my clients. I know I do, because this is really how we find the confidence in ourselves. And I think that this is an important element that people can get to. Before you feel like you can do it, you can borrow someone else's confidence to know that you can.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And I share this next question to the listener because it might make you think, oh man, I'll share the question with you, but then you can reflect as well. But this might be a little bit of a gut punch, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I did things like this. If you were going through your situation, Lindsay, or if you're listening and you're going through a dark season or have gone through a dark season, maybe you're in the thick of it. What if you got a case of the fuck-its? Like you just stopped training, didn't care what you were eating, put anything into your mouth, your routine was out the window, you were like completely on the other side where like you're not prioritizing your health at all. How would things, do you think, have ended up for you if you did it that way?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't be here talking to you about it today. So there's that. But like, don't get me wrong. Again, there were days throughout this season with everything that happened with Logan that I missed workouts. I hit a drive-through. I did have the occasional fuck it and really just didn't want to show up for myself because I was showing up for everybody else. But at the end of the day, I also still had to make that really hard decision that it wasn't even necessarily every single day. Sometimes it was every hour that I just had to show up. And if I hadn't, I wouldn't have had the energy, the mental clarity, especially to show up for Logan, to show up for our daughter, my husband during the hardest time of our lives, because instead of being a source of strength, I would have ultimately just started to drown in that darkness. And that would have done a disservice to everyone who needed me, especially my family. And so training and taking care of myself, it wasn't just about me. And I think a lot of people need that reminder that it's not that whole self-care isn't selfish line that we all hear so often, but really it was proving that when life gets hard, I am strong enough to handle it. It was about taking my power back as much as I possibly could, because at the end of the day, my power had completely been stripped, and giving up would have just shown that I'm weak, that I was powerless, and that's just not who I am. And the truth is, when you stop caring for yourself, you let the chaos win. So in situations like ours, and where so much is already out of control, I really needed to cling to what I could control. So again, it's that control the controllable, but letting it all go might have just felt easier in the moment, and it would have made the long haul so much harder, because again, I wouldn't have had the mental clarity to make the decisions, to even listen and interact with doctors or talk about treatment plans and, side effects and everything that was going on. I wouldn't have mentally been there and been able to comprehend everything like that. So it also just gave me the strength to get through, and choosing not to give up was really the difference between surviving that season or being consumed by it.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable. I think that what I see people doing, and I sometimes see people in the thick of it, the reason I ask that question is because they just get this fuck it case every single day. And it's not just one day. Like you said, we all have our moments where we need to experience feelings, and we're human. And my therapist reminds me of this often. He's like, you can't always be in problem solving mode. Sometimes you need to feel the feelings. But the difference is, if you get stuck in this dark hole that I see people going into, and it's just a matter of less and less intention to get out of there, you just dig a deeper hole for yourself.
Oh, hands down.
Yeah. And I think that what you said was really powerful, that I want to sidebar there, of taking things hour by hour or even minute by minute. Like, just focus on the step ahead of you. That's kind of what I got from that, right? Like, don't be afraid to like take a moment and step back, but then get back on track at your next meal, at your next opportunity to move. Any chance that you get to just ground yourself and come back to the behaviors and habits that are going to keep you healthy. Because once you're in the dark hole too deep, it's even harder to get out. So that's what I want to leave people with.
It's so true. And I often relate to that whole analogy about the staircase, that, you know, when you're at the very, very bottom of the staircase because you're in the darkest pit of despair. It's not about looking at the very top and what you need to get to. It's about literally looking at that next step. So it's about focusing on the next step or two and put the rest of the staircase in a shadow while you just focus on the few steps in front of you.
That's a really good analogy because I think that all the time, one foot in front of the other. That's what I tell myself, just one step at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
It's so true.
I wanted to thank you as well for sharing so vulnerably and openly and really helping our listener with your experience. I think this is really powerful.
Well, thank you so much, T.
Of course. Do you have any other final words, tidbits, or anything that you want to share?
So I'm going to be totally blunt here, but that's just who I am.
Good.
But ultimately, when shit hits the fan, don't let it splatter all over your progress because it's going to hit the fan. It's inevitable. Life is not perfect. We know that this journey has ebbs and flows, and really it's all about staying strong. Staying stubborn is probably one of the biggest key pieces of advice I can give you. And really, it's just reminding yourself that you are so much tougher than whatever it is that's trying to take you down.
Absolutely. And I just want to add a sidebar that Lindsay is such a great, not only coach in terms of like the tactics and the plan, but really like having a lot of empathy for people in these situations. So as you guys know, we have our contact info in the show notes, and Lindsay or myself are happy to help you along your journey if you're in a similar place and need some support. So thank you again, Lindsay. I so appreciate this, and this definitely won't be the last time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, T. It has been an absolute honor to be on the pod, and I can't wait till the next one.
Yay!
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Get Sculpted. We hope you feel inspired, empowered, and ready to take the next step in your fitness journey. Remember, building your 2.0 body is a unique journey for you. It's about showing up for yourself consistently and not being perfect.
If you loved today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave us a review and tag us on social at getsculpted.ca. Your feedback helps us reach more women like you who are ready to cut through the noise and make lasting changes.
For more daily tips, inspiration, and behind-the-scenes content, follow us on Instagram and check out our handles in the show notes below. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on Get Sculpted. Until then, remember this: getting sculpted isn't about working harder, it's about working smarter.